Good morning, and thank you for joining us for Sales and Marketing FriTalks. Every second Friday, we share insights, best practices, and anecdotes from technology companies.
Good morning.
This time, we decided to just discuss among ourselves. And for this discussion, we selected quite interesting topic in our opinion about what makes sense to measure and why in terms of the sales and marketing pipeline. And there are tons of different KPIs on the marketing and sales side. And it's actually very easy to really, occupy your time and efforts with looking to different reports and measuring different KPIs. And we thought that, hey, let's discuss and share our insights, our opinions on what really makes sense and how actually to make it meaningful for both marketing team and sales team. And I think it would be good to start, first of all, maybe with just understanding and going through the pipeline structure itself. And it can be probably described in different ways. We have seen also that some organizations use one taxonomy and others are different. But nevertheless, there are main stages what probably exist in every pipeline or in most of organizations' pipeline. And I think first of them is about the lead generation phase. And here we use different media channels, organic and paid, to reach and engage the target audience. And basically, our main objective here is to convert them from strangers to known prospects. So we collect information about them, we put them into our funnel, and start engagement.
Yeah, and there are tons of metrics how you can measure advertising impact on different channels, things like reach, impression, frequency, and so on. But as we are not really focusing on advertising today, we will leave these things a bit aside.
Yeah. Nevertheless, so the next stage typically is kind of described as a nurturing. When you have already gathered some leads, then you start actually warming up them. And at this stage, you work with those prospects and trying to read and sense their interest about certain topics, certain products, and basically to qualify them.
Yes, and next stage is lead qualification. And this, I believe, is super important stage for marketing people to understand, because if marketing manages to do lead qualification properly, as far as it's possible, they would turn out to be very helpful for their sales counterparts and also will contribute to growth of company itself. And after lead is usually qualified by marketing, then it's passed over to sales, and then sales starts doing their job.
Yeah, they start looking to this kind of as more or less opportunities already. They reaching out to the prospective customers and trying to qualify if there is any real business opportunity. And there are different ways of doing the qualification, but one of the main approaches, especially in B2B and enterprise sales, is called so-called BANT approach. It's about budget, authority, needs, and timing. So during the conversation and during your iteration with the customer, you are trying to understand whether they have all these necessary attributes. And after the lead has been qualified, it becomes actually a sales opportunity or disqualified as well. And then the all pre-sales and sales activities starts at full extent. And obviously, in the end, the final stage is usually the closure of the deal. And this is the moment when you hopefully celebrate the win, however, not always, obviously.
Yes, and also at this stage, it's a time to really count the money, because at this time you also have a true picture how much closing this deal cost, how much sales effort went to it, how much marketing budget, and did marketing actually help generate lead, and did marketing support to close the deal?
Yeah, and at every of this stage, there are many things to be measured, and I think it doesn't make sense to really explain why do you need to measure. But at the same time, it's important really to understand what are these measurements, what you really need to look at, and to understand the performance, and actually to make some decisions, to be able to make decisions. So where to start? Our approach has been always that we were looking to the metrics and to the KPIs from the bottom-up type of approach. We were trying to first defining the main KPIs, which is the revenue or size of the deal or any similar to that. And then based on that, you can calculate back actually what it means in terms of other KPIs during the pipeline.
Yes, and actually sometimes it's quite extensive exercise because exactly as Andrei said, the starting point for developing KPIs and metrics is actually figuring out what exactly you want to achieve. And usually companies want to achieve certain revenue, certain extra revenue. And this also is very important decision we have had in our experience. Some clients saying, well, I want as much as possible. But as much as possible doesn't really work, because you see, when you have a given budget and you know what's the average size of deal, you can calculate how many new deals you really need to generate. And once you know that number, then you can calculate back how many sales opportunities you would need, how many sales qualified leads, how many marketing qualified leads, and how many people just, signing up for your content like white papers, ebooks, or webinars. And the end result, the revenue, helps you understand how many leads you need. And that in turn helps you understand what the scope of demand generation campaign actually you need to design, how much budget you need to put on it, how many channels or geographies you need to cover.
Yeah, and probably, again, there are no one kind of single way of doing that and measuring, but we just share that, from our experience, what has been really working well is to look at it from, the end goal perspective and result perspective, what you want to achieve. And that helps you really to calculate back, what needs to be achieved at every stage of this funnel or of this pipeline. Same time, not all probably KPIs are equally, important, and maybe we can go and try to look at these KPIs from again the very beginning of the pipeline. And as Roland mentioned, so in very beginning there is a lot of things what you need to look at to understand whether your lead acquisition works well. Typically, you are using paid and maybe sometimes organic channels, depends on whether you have them and how strong they are. And then you looking for things like, for instance, the reach, whether you are having enough reach to accomplish your end result and the goal, which is, for instance, the revenue or number of deals. Then what else? Typically, for understanding whether your media performs well, you need to look at things like conversion rates, and conversion rates both on the banner, like on the media itself, which shows you whether your message and whether your value proposition actually resonates with the audience you are reaching, right? So if that is low, it indicates that probably your message is not resonating well. And then you need to basically look at whether you have right audience defined or whether the message is strong enough to engage with this audience.
Yes, but I would say that that also, if you look at whether audience is engaging your message, you should also consider that sometimes you can really make the banner or video really exciting, and then people are actually clicking on it. You see very high click-through rates,
Yeah.
Because I mean it's exciting. Everybody wants to see it or everybody wants to play this video, but it doesn't necessarily lead to sales. You just attracted more
Absolutely
attention
not.
to your advertising. But are these people actually willing to go ahead? I don't know, participate in webinar, book a demo? Quite often, it's not the case. So
Yeah,
usually
therefore,
you need to look at more than one metrics to really figure out what's happening.
yeah, therefore, on this stage, I think it's also important to look at the conversion also on the landing page. So when people are landing to your page where you trying to sell them either a piece of content or the webinar or anything else, so you also have to look whether they actually converting on this page, whether page again resonating, whether the that works as you expected.
Yes,
right?
and once it happens, once a person has signed up, once the person has filled in the form and has signed up for again white paper, demo, maybe webinar, then that's the first moment when you can attach monetary value to something that has happened. Basically, you can calculate cost per lead registered. And that is interesting metric because from one hand, it clearly provides information of what is return on your marketing investment. But from other hand, it can also be very misleading because you see, the fact that somebody downloaded the white paper doesn't mean that they are actually a client who has money, who has legitimate interest, and so on. Often we see students being really curious people and trying to understand technological things, downloading. And then sometimes also there are quite a bit of what you can call random people who are not your target audience, but still they are clicking and downloading. And this is why you actually need to look much further than cost per lead, because you also need to consider whether this lead is qualified. And then you can see what is actual cost per qualified lead, right? And then probably you want to go even further and you want to see whether those leads whom are qualified by marketing are actually qualified by sales. When a sales representative picks up a phone, makes a call and talks. And as Andres mentioned, bond criteria, budget, authority, need, and timing usually is used there. And then we can calculate, all right, but what's the percentage actually of those leads which were qualified by marketing, which were also qualified by sales? And that's kind of a good metrics because it shows whether marketing is actually generating leads that sales can qualify.
Yeah, and again, here, one aspect to look at is cost of the lead or qualified lead or similar. And another aspect to look at it is the quality of them, right? And the quality is typically showed by the percentage or by conversion. If you see that lead which you have acquired in the beginning of your funnel or the pipeline has moved further, that's a good sign. That means that it has been qualified and the quality is according to your expectations or sales team expectations. Of course, it's not only way to look at the quality, and I think it would be also a bit misleading if you just limit yourself on looking at percentage metrics or something like that. In order to really distinguish and to understand the quality of your leads, you have to actually talk to your salespeople, to inside sales or somebody who is doing the follow-up or the qualification of those leads.
Absolutely, these conversations are like a treasure trove because that's the only way how really marketing and sales can make sure that they are working together as a team, and that is really the only way how marketing can learn what is behind the numbers. Because you see, apart from what you can measure like objectively, there are also quite possibly some friction or organizational issues involved. For example, if a company runs a marketing campaign and start generating lead, they need to make sure that actually they have sales representative resources available to make calls. And if you don't have these things, and if a call cannot be made, let's say in 48 hours, then obviously you cannot qualify leads. And from other hand, it also doesn't make sense to continue investing in marketing because there's nobody making calls.
Yeah, it's another aspect of looking and using these numbers for making your sales and marketing activities bringing the highest ROI. But again, so if we're coming back to the this qualification phase of the pipeline, that another way to look at the quality of your leads is a level of engagement. What they demonstrate or does not demonstrate. As you started to nurture them, you have to have some ability to measure how actively they are engaged with your content, with something you are offering to them, with activities you propose to them, and so on. And that also can be used for creating so-called scoring. And that's another very important, let's say, metric or perspective to look at the lead's quality is the scoring of the lead.
Yes, and here I think we need to come back to the discussion we had, I think, in the summer about marketing technologies, because the obvious question is, all right, but how on earth can you do that? And the thing is that modern marketing automation software helps you actually handle that. And the technology is basically, in terms of lead qualification by marketing, technologies allow to do essentially two things. And first thing is that they allow to understand the client profile by certain criteria that is dependent on forms on the field. For example, if a person is CEO of a large size company, probably we can attribute higher scoring to that person. Right. Yeah. And if a person, let's say, is a student, then probably not, because not likely student will become a customer of expensive technology built for B2B markets. And second thing what technologies allows you to do is actually to figure out behavior. Answer questions like, did the person actually clicked on the link to read white paper? Did person signed up for a webinar? Did that person completed the webinar? Did they visit the website? And many other metrics. And as a result, marketing can pretty much automate marketing pipeline in terms of scoring leads and figuring out which contacts are actually qualified to be passed over to sales.
Yeah, right. And again, like lead can be defined in different ways, and that is something what you internally have to always discuss and align between marketing and sales, what the lead means for both of you. Same time, technically lead can really meet those criteria what you have defined, as Roland mentioned. So for instance, it's a certain person, a certain role, from certain company, and so on and so forth. But it doesn't mean this person is ready to have a sales conversation with you yet. So therefore, it is this nurturing and qualification phase is one of the crucial, what typically somehow overlooked. And many companies tend to jump over it and try to, let's say, speed up the engagement of the customer with the sales conversation, which is pretty wrong thing to do. Because yes, obviously, looking to ourselves, do you like if somebody, immediately calls you after you have, looked to the new refrigerator in the store and saying, hey, I'm ready to, sell it to you immediately. Please sign up and so on. Definitely not. So you have some certain process what you are going through, but this is again a different story. And I think we covered it in our previous episodes as well, talking about the customer journey and the overall GTM planning. But what is really important is to be able to identify those behaviors, what can really indicate about, one, the quality of the lead, but secondly, about the level of readiness of the person for the sales conversation.
Yes. I would also like to touch upon some big metrics which companies need to consider and think about. And these are two. One is cost of acquiring a customer. That is purely monetary value, which you get if you calculate your costs of sales, your costs of marketing, and you actually calculate how much does it cost to acquire a new customer. And quite frankly, many companies don't know how much it costs, and for many of them, these costs are incredibly high. And again, we are not focusing today on those costs, although there are lots of tactics how you can optimize those costs. But it's very important to know them. And marketing actually should really take care of knowing what are marketing costs of customer acquisition. Because it's very important to put it in context with the other super important metric, which is lifetime value. And lifetime value basically is a profit that you expect to generate from every new client. So if we, as example, if we assume that, let's say we have a SaaS company and we have a product with monthly subscription rate of 100 euro, right? And if we know that on average customers stay with us for 18 months, we can easily calculate that our expected revenue from new customer is 1,800 euros, right? And if we assume that we work with 40% margin, then our profitability, or the point or the value of doing business with this customer would be 720 euros. So, and 720 euros is actually what we can pay as a maximum for acquiring this customer. Because if we pay more, we're actually losing money, right? And that is a bad decision. So this is why really also when we talk with our clients, one of the first questions we ask is really what is your expected lifetime value? Because again, that gives a strong feeling of how much you can invest in marketing and what channels you can actually use.
Yeah, and in that regard, it's also very useful to look at this data, like for instance, the customer acquisition costs as a main metric for you, because when you are able to attribute from which channel you have got this lead, and then you basically close that deal, and you see how much that costs, you can discover really important insights in terms of which channels actually are best for you to invest to. We had some cases where if you would approach it from very traditional marketing measurement perspective, looking at just cost per lead on channel level, then you could see that there are some channels which are really very affordable or very cheap to bring you a lot of leads, right? And that might initiate you to invest more into these channels, because obviously you as a marketer, you are measured on how many leads you have brought to the pipeline in most of cases. Let's be open, right? And that is how you justify your investments, how you justify your even sometimes existence. And therefore, most of efforts really allocated to that. But from the company perspective, and if you would be an owner of this company, or if you would be somebody who is responsible for the revenue results, then for you it's much more important to see from which channel actually you are getting real sales and how much that sales result cost to you. And what we discovered sometimes that at first glance, the most important, the most expensive channel on the top of the funnel might actually be the most effective channel for bringing the end result, but not always, honestly. We know that some people say, hey, Facebook is not good because it doesn't generate quality leads, and better we go for the LinkedIn. But again, we haven't seen it, as a rule. To be honest, we see that there are some cases where LinkedIn really can bring you better result or better quality leads, but not necessarily in all possible geographies and cases.
Yes, and actually, if you're targeting, let's say, multiple geographies, multiple channels, you need to really keep a track on costs and cost per lead and cost per qualified lead and cost per opportunity on quite a large table, because our practice tells that you cannot actually you can make educated guess, but you never know what will work better. And we have had campaigns with, let's say, extremely low CPL and large number of leads coming from Google Display Network, a good number coming from Facebook, and small number and very expensive coming from LinkedIn, right? But it turned out that LinkedIn leads were some of the most valuable, and everything that came in from other channels was of lower quality. So you always need to check that, and practically also, again, it depends very much on sales cycle. If the sales cycle is very long, like I don't know, 9 months or something, then tracking back to the source of lead perhaps doesn't serve too much information. Then you need to look back at let's say, how many of those leads were sales qualified, how many turned into sales opportunities, because you simply do not know if they have been closed, and they are not closed because it takes quite a lot of time. And also you should consider the amount of data you have, because quite often in B2B you are only looking to close a few really large deals per year, and then of course you cannot get reliable statistics, and you should look at events happening earlier in the pipeline.
Yeah, what I also wanted to mention, and somehow we maybe missed it in the conversation when we discussed about the conversions from leads to sales qualified and so on, and the quality discussion. I think one of other KPIs to look at, and companies might measure it differently, is basically how long the lead has been untouched and how long a lead was in certain stage. So, because what we see that it's again something to look at and to understand whether you actually are able to process all these leads in timely manner. Because if you are not able to touch a lead which has been generated for maybe a few days or even weeks, it's a bad signal, and definitely it will not help you to achieve your revenue targets.
Yes, absolutely, and here we go back to the discussion we had in the beginning, that companies need to plan very carefully the extra revenue they want to get, so that marketing can be fine-tuned to meeting that goal. But another important thing is to plan actually resources, because although generating new leads and qualified lead is a good thing to have, in many cases that also starts creating quite a lot of extra work for salespeople, for technical people, doing pilots, doing tests, answering technical inquiries, and so on. And companies need to plan and be very realistic of how much leads they can handle, because leads can be generated. I mean, that's something that is, I wouldn't say easily done, but that is entirely possible.
Yeah, and again, what I really have observed, and that is something what I always recommend, to go beyond just a lead discussion. In the end, you need to generate and bring revenue, and that's actually how your company can grow. So therefore, when you think of establishing some rhythm of business or the reporting, that you really have to look at all of these possible levels, starting, as we discussed, from the media, and obviously those are really important metrics, including the costs of lead and so on. But you also have to look at the quality of the leads. You might define that your own way. You also have to look at velocity of your pipeline and how leads are progressing through the pipeline. And you also have to obviously measure the cost of customer acquisition, and that actually is most defining, on my opinion, metric to look at.
Yes, and also one interesting thing, which I think particularly relates to startups competing in emerging industries, which are financed by venture capital. Be very careful regarding how much really cost of acquiring a customer is, because you see, it may entirely happen that some of your competitors are financed with lots of money by venture capitalists, and their only aim is to increase the number of users almost at any cost, right? And if that happens, then either you match the investment and acquire users and customers at loss, or you kind of don't play this game and look for other markets or other channels to utilize?
Thank you, Roland. It was a great piece of advice. I hope so. Our time is out, I think, and we would like to thank you all for being with us. Stay tuned, and as usually, follow us on LinkedIn through the hashtag FriTalks, and you can also subscribe to our company page, ibd-consulting, where we share recordings, where we share also additional information and insights. And please join us in a couple of weeks back, and let's have another discussion. And if you have any topic what you would like to share with our audience, please reach out to us, and we will be happy to actually bring you to the studio and to the conversation with us. Otherwise, I wish you a great rest of the Black Friday. Enjoy. And stay tuned. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.